Minutes after sunrise on a quiet Saturday in Ashbury, Massachusetts, a patrol car rolled to a stop outside 14 Beach Hollow Lane. The home belonged to the Albright family. 2 professionals, 2 kids, a white-railed porch, and a flag that never missed a holiday. The reason for the call was not a burglary, not a domestic dispute. It was a welfare check on a 17-year-old babysitter who never made it home. Officers marked the time at 6:42 a.m. They noted a black SUV in the driveway with condensation still beading on the hood. The family's exterior cameras faced the street. The babysitter's bicycle leaned against the side fence. Her phone pinged once from somewhere between the kitchen and the garage and then went dark. A neighbor's doorbell camera provided the first image. The girl arriving the previous evening at 6:01 p.m., backpack over one shoulder, hair tied back, a water bottle clipped to the strap. She did not appear on any camera leaving. Inside the house, a motion sensor log showed movement upstairs at 9:14 p.m., basement at 9:36, the garage at 9:39, and then nothing from 9:42 onward. Detectives secured the property by 7:20 a.m. They found a spotless kitchen, a living room staged like a catalog page, and a laundry room with a dryer still warm. In the garage, a drain cover sat slightly ajar. In the backyard's greenhouse, newly turned soil cut a clean rectangle where last week's potting bench once stood. By noon, the perfect family home was a taped perimeter. Uniforms rotated posts. Evidence techs loaded carriers. An Amber Alert stretched across the town's morning traffic. Behind the glass, a calendar with color blocks and child activities looked undisturbed. The house said order. The logs said otherwise. And the babysitter's absence set a clock that would not stop until the secret behind Beach Hollow Lane surfaced in full. Ashbury sits 20 miles north of Boston, a commuter town with a historic Main Street, manicured fields, and neighborhoods mapped around cul-de-sacs and school bus stops. The Albright family matched the setting. Daniel Albright, 44, owned a design-build firm that renovated historic properties. Elise Albright, 42, managed programming for a youth literacy nonprofit. Their children, Lena, 12, and Max, 9, appeared in school newsletters and local 5K photos. The Albrights' house, a renovated colonial with a detached greenhouse, hosted scout meetings, book drives, and spring brunches. The babysitter was Nora Benton, 17, a senior at Ashbury High, honor roll student, varsity cross country. She had watched the Albright children for 2 years. Her shifts were predictable. Friday evenings, occasional Saturdays. Friends described her as punctual and organized. Her parents reported her missing at 10:37 p.m. after she failed to return calls and did not arrive home by curfew. On paper, the scene looked straightforward. A missing teenager last seen at a trusted house on a routine night. The Albrights told dispatch they had turned in early. They said the last time they saw Nora was around 9, folding laundry and bringing board games to the den for the kids. They suggested she might have left through the side gate. They emphasized how safe the neighborhood was. The search began from the front steps and moved outward. It did not move far before it turned back in. Investigators reconstructed the evening from devices, cameras, and receipts. Nora unlocked her bike at 5:52 p.m., rode east along Beach Hollow, and arrived at the Albrights' house at 6:01 p.m. The family's interior system logged the front door at 6:02. The kitchen camera recorded takeout containers delivered at just 18, 2 adult meals, 2 kids' meals. The recycling bin later held the bag and printed receipt time-stamped 6/16, matching a card tied to Elise's account. At 7:03 p.m., the den motion sensor activated and remained steady for 21 minutes, consistent with a movie. At 7:34, the upstairs hallway pinged for 30 seconds. At 7:41, the basement sensor registered a single activation followed by a 10-minute block of stillness. The basement camera, unlike the den and kitchen feeds, was offline. Logs showed it had been disabled at 5:49 p.m., 13 minutes before Nora arrived. The service provider later confirmed the disable occurred from inside the network with an admin credential. At 8:10 p.m., a neighbor's dog cam recorded the Albrights The SUV leaving the driveway and returning at 8:28. A grocery receipt recovered from the vehicle reflected a purchase at 8:21. Heavy-duty contractor bags, chlorine shock, and a roll of contractor-grade duct tape. Staff remembered a woman matching Elisa's description purchasing the items and asking for directions to the exit. The cashier recalled a calm demeanor and exact change. Inside the Albright home, the kids' tablets showed logged screen time from 7:20 to 9:05 p.m., mostly video content and a math game. Parental control software recorded a good night profile activation at 9:08. The children later confirmed that bedtime was set earlier than usual. At 9:14 p.m., the upstairs hallway sensor pinged again. At 9:22, the washer began a heavy-duty cycle with hot water set for sanitization. Residue analysis later identified traces of chlorine shock in the detergent tray. At 9:30, the dryer started. The basement sensor activated at 9:36 for 9 seconds. The garage door code panel registered an entry at 9:39. The exterior side gate sensor flagged open at 9:41 and closed at 9:42. At 9:45, Nora's phone lost connection inside the house. Geofence data placed its last handshake near the interior door to the garage. Her smartwatch, recovered later, recorded elevated heart rate between 9:33 and 9:40, and then a sudden drop-off. It also marked a failed SOS at 9:38, a press that did not complete call routing. The family timeline placed Daniel in the den with the children from 7:15 to 9:10, then upstairs reading until 9:50. Elise said she fell asleep on the sofa around 9:30 and woke when officers knocked in the morning. The data did not fit either claim cleanly. The den camera saw the children. It did not see Daniel after 8:02. The upstairs sensor recorded movement at times that overlapped with the washer and basement, suggesting multiple zones in use by more than one person. At 6:42 a.m., when officers arrived, the interior smelled faintly of chlorine. A towel basket in the laundry room contained folded items still warm at the center, including a pair of black leggings and a heather gray hoodie not matching Elisa's or Lena's sizes. In the kitchen, a glass baking dish soaked in the sink under a thin film of cloudy water. On the garage floor near the ajar drain cover, a small smear looked out of place on the epoxy. Luminol later confirmed a reaction. A floor jack sat under a shelving unit, hydraulic arm partly extended. A shallow drag mark led from the unit to the drain. The backyard greenhouse held potting trays lined and labeled. Along the back edge where a bench had stood the previous week, rectangle-cut soil showed disturbance. A weight mat was rolled to one side. A sump pump outlet ran to the yard, its discharge line damp. An extension cord trailed back to a wall outlet with a timer attached. The timer was set for 2:15 a.m. to 4 a.m. By mid-morning, detectives shifted from welfare check to suspected crime scene. They secured a warrant for a full search. They brought in ground-penetrating radar for the greenhouse and a team to camera snake the garage drains. The perfect family facade stayed on the walls. Family portraits, chore charts, soccer schedules. The house promised normalcy in frames and labels. The map of the evening's movements cut through it in unambiguous lines. The babysitter's bicycle remained against the fence where she had left it. Her backpack was not in the hallway. Her phone did not turn back on. Detective Erin Zhao, 19 years with the County Major Crimes Unit, took lead. She divided the work into 3 streams: the digital map, the house map, and the people map. The provider restored the home's network logs. The basement camera disable occurred at 5:49 p.m. from the admin account. HomeCore, a password reset. Request for HomeCore was executed at 5:31 p.m. from an iPad registered to Elise. The laundry smart appliances recorded cycles, initiated via the wall controls, not through the app. The garage keypad code used at 9:39 matched the family's general code, not a temporary code. The side gate sensor was a standalone magnetic read. Its open-close stamps matched the house controller. Nora's phone reported a last Bluetooth connection with a set of wireless earbuds named DA Shop at 9:35 p.m. The earbuds belonged to Daniel and typically paired in his truck. The truck's infotainment log showed a USB connection at 10:02 p.m. and a navigation search for South End Creek Trailhead at 10:04, followed by Cancel Route at 10:06. The SUV's mileage had a 6-mile increase compared to the previous morning. The neighbor's camera placed the SUV leaving at 10:11 p.m. and returning at 10:42. Evidence techs swabbed the garage drain lip and trap. Trace blood was present beneath a fresh layer of oil. A wet-dry vacuum canister in the corner held gray water with particulate matter later identified as hair and textile fibers consistent with Nora's hoodie. The floor jack had a smear of transfer matching the drain lip. The greenhouse soil flagged on ground-penetrating radar at a depth of 30 inches. The rectangle measured 6 feet by 3. A cadaver dog alerted once along the rectangle edge and once along the greenhouse door threshold. The sump pump discharge tested positive for diluted blood. In the basement, a wall section behind a storage rack revealed a false panel with a concealed latch. Behind it, a 4-by-8-foot room held a folded camp cot, a marine cooler, zip ties in a plastic bin, and a stainless tray with utility knives and nitrile gloves. The tray had been wiped. Fluorescein revealed streaking consistent with rushed cleaning. The room's small ventilation fan connected to the greenhouse via a duct hidden behind the bench line. A motion sensor inside the concealed room was not connected to the home's live grid. It logged to a discrete battery unit with its own timestamps. That unit recorded activation at 9:33 p.m. Detectives interviewed Daniel and Elise separately. Daniel repeated that he watched a movie with the kids until 9 and then read upstairs. Elise said she fell asleep on the sofa after wiping the counters. Neither mentioned a basement room. Neither could account for the greenhouse soil disturbance beyond repotting last weekend. Both consented to swabs and prints. Both surrendered phones. Daniel's phone had a deletion window the previous evening between 10:15 and 10:40 p.m. Data recovery later restored search terms. How long to break down tissue chlorine, garage drain trap cleaning, and best way to clean epoxy floor. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood. Multiple cameras picked up the Albrights' SUV at 10:11 p.m., headed south, and at 10:41 p.m., returning from the same direction. A park camera on South End Creek Trail's access road captured the SUV's headlights at 10:23 p.m., and a dim flash of brake lights at 10:27 near the kayak launch. A second camera recorded no vehicles on the launch road beyond that single pass. Foot patrols later located a disturbed area along the creek bank and a coiled length of contractor bag material snagged under low brush. The kids were interviewed at a child advocacy center with a specialist present. Their statements were limited and consistent with routine, movie, snacks, bedtime. The daughter, Lena, mentioned a secret room once in a whisper and then withdrew. Legally, detectives paused further questioning until counsel and guardians were in place. A search warrant for the family's vehicles returned a significant finding. In the SUV's cargo bay, beneath a removable floor panel, techs recovered a roll of contractor bags, a box of nitrile gloves, and a handheld pump with hose attachments. A receipt in the glove box matched the grocery record from 8:21 p.m. In the truck's bed toolbox, techs located a small bolt cutter with faint textile fibers caught in the hinge grease. DNA swabs returned quickly on high-priority samples. Blood from the garage drain matched Nora. Hair in the wet, dry vacuum matched Nora. A partial print on the stainless tray in the concealed room matched Elise's right index finger. A glove inside the marine cooler bore a latent consistent with Daniel's right ring finger. The digital team pulled school registration records for the Albright children to build context. Hospital birth certificates and pediatric files had anomalies. The daughter's birth hospital did not have a record that matched the certificate number. The son's immunization history included gaps and entries from clinics across 3 states under 2 slightly different spellings of his middle name. The pattern suggested a family that moved more than the public narrative implied. Detective Zhao expanded the scope. She requested state vital records audits, passport application checks, and prior property histories for the Albrights' former addresses in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. A subpoena to Daniel's design build company pulled customer files and supplier invoices. The company had ordered prefabricated wall panels with hidden latches 3 times in the past 5 years for client safe storage. 1 order shipped to the Albrights' home address 18 months. Earlier, by day 3, ground crews opened the greenhouse rectangle. They recovered a freshly buried marine cooler and a wrapped bundle. The bundle contained clothing and towels soaked with chlorinated water. The cooler contained a set of personal effects: Nora's smartwatch, a wallet with her school ID, and a bottle of acetaminophen. No remains were in the greenhouse. Along South End Creek, divers recovered a second cooler weighted with gym plates and a cinder block. Inside were contractor bag segments, zip ties, a section of braided rope, and a single athletic shoe consistent with Nora's size and brand. The shoe matched wear patterns from photos taken the week prior. At this stage, the case tilted from missing person to homicide. Prosecutors prepared for arrest warrants. Detectives finalized the chain: basement concealment, garage drain, greenhouse transfer staging, creek disposal attempt. They still lacked a body. They did not lack a sequence. The first break did not come from the creek. It came from the registrar's office. The daughter's birth certificate number belonged to a different child born the same week, a stillbirth registered 2 counties away. The son's early pediatric entries matched a clinic near Allentown, Pennsylvania, and then shifted to a Boston area walk-in with a new chart number 1 year later. The pediatric paper trail looked patched rather than continuous. Detective Zhao ordered familial DNA testing with the parents' consent under the guise of excluding contamination. The lab returned a result that forced a reframe. Neither child shared a biological relationship with Daniel or Elise. The probability of non-parentage surged past statistical doubt. The children were not legally adopted in Massachusetts. No adoption records existed in Pennsylvania or New Jersey under the Albright name or documented aliases. The perfect family image acquired a new definition. It was constructed. The second twist surfaced from a long-archived missing person case. A toddler named Maya Carver disappeared from a rental home in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, 9 years earlier. The family had been transient. The mother overdosed 2 years after the disappearance. The toddler's case went cold. When the Massachusetts lab searched national DNA indices for close kin to the Albright children, a half-match pinged to a maternal aunt in Allentown who had submitted a consumer DNA test the previous year. The aunt's profile linked to the missing toddler. The daughter, Lena, was statistically likely to be that toddler, renamed and re-registered. The third twist arrived through property records. The Albrights previously owned a farmhouse outside Easton, Pennsylvania, under the name Daniel A. Bright, a misspelling that persisted across insurance and utility bills. During renovations, county inspectors had cited the property for an unpermitted root cellar with unusual ventilation. No follow-up inspection occurred after a sudden sale 6 months later. The buyer's feedback cited musty odors and odd cutouts in a basement wall. The fourth twist came from a storage unit in Nashua, New Hampshire, rented to a lease under her maiden name. Detectives executed a warrant and cataloged the contents: 3 suitcases packed with children's clothing in 2 size ranges, a laminator and blank cardstock, a portable label printer, passports for the children under the Albright surname with photos taken against the same wall, and a folder marked Medical. Inside the folder sat immunization records printed on templates from multiple states with mismatched lot numbers. Also, inside, 6 Polaroids of a toddler at various ages in a kitchen that did not match the Albright home. On the back of one, a note read, L. Starts preschool. The fifth twist tightened the circle back to Nora. From her school laptop, Tex recovered a draft essay in her private drive labeled Beach Hollow Project. The essay, started 2 weeks before her disappearance, documented an assignment on hidden histories of our town. She had chosen to write about families who move often and how records follow. The draft included a paragraph noting that Lena's baby photos looked newer than her age would suggest, and that Max's middle name appeared spelled 2 ways in school directories. It referenced a conversation with a woman from church who used to live near Allentown, now residing in Ashbury, who mentioned a child who went missing in that area. Nora had planned to interview the Albrights to verify dates. The 6th twist emerged from the bank. Elise's nonprofit payroll reflected her standard salary. Daniel's business account told another story: significant cash withdrawals, cashier's checks, and payments to a private mailbox company. Among the withdrawals was a $12,000 cashier's check deposited to a Las Vegas bank 2 years earlier into an account held by a woman named S. Carver. The name overlapped with the missing toddler's mother's surname. The timeline suggested an under-the-table transfer tied to custody or silence. The 7th twist connected to Daniel's supplier invoices. One invoice from a specialty hardware company in Illinois listed magnetic latch concealment doors and sound-damping panels. Shipping went to the Albrights' house. A follow-up email from Daniel to the supplier thanked them for the panel sizes fitting the greenhouse bench run exactly. At this point, prosecutors expanded the case beyond a single homicide. The working theory adjusted. The Albrights had established a false family using non-adopted children, moved across states to avoid scrutiny, and constructed concealment spaces. The missing babysitter likely discovered anomalies and became a threat. Disposal behavior matched panic mixed with planning. Divers returned to South End Creek with a revised search grid informed by the SUV telemetry and the brake light frame. On day 5, they located a series of weighted bags in a bend where the current slowed. Inside were cut fabric, hair, a cracked phone screen protector, and bone fragments. Dental comparison later matched a premolar to Nora's dental records. The coroner established manner of death as homicide based on blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with impacts against a hard edge and tool marks found on recovered fragments. Detectives then traced the Albrights' move into Massachusetts. They found a defunct home health agency in New Jersey that had notarized a packet for Elise under a prior name. The notary's journal included a note: documentation for guardianship. Informal. No court filing followed. Records suggested ad hoc arrangements, cash exchanges, and a commute to legitimacy that never crossed a judge's desk. The final twist came from inside the house. Tucked behind the photo frames in the upstairs hallway, Tex found a narrow envelope with 8 old photo IDs, a ladder of faces and names across a decade. The earliest showed Elise as Elise Garner, with longer hair and a Pennsylvania address. Another showed Daniel as Daniel Brooks. A later set showed the children with different surnames. The photos were taken in the same strip mall booth, consistent background, consistent lighting. The pattern was crude but consistent. Acquire, rename, relocate, reset. After conferring with the district attorney, Detective Zhao moved. Arrest teams took Daniel and Elise into custody without incident at 9:12 a.m. on day 6. Charges included first-degree murder, kidnapping, interference with custody, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, identity fraud, and conspiracy. A separate juvenile court petition placed the children under protective custody pending kinship DNA confirmation. The perfect family secret did not unfold as gossip or speculation. It unfolded as file numbers, templates, part numbers, weights, timestamps, and fragments that added up to a design no one in the cul-de-sac anticipated. The Commonwealth arraigned Daniel and Elise Albright in district court within 24 hours. Bail was denied. The case moved to Superior Court on an indictment returned 2 months later: murder in the first degree, kidnapping, interference with custody for both children, abuse of a corpse, witness intimidation, tampering with evidence, and identity fraud. Prosecutors outlined the sequence in direct terms. They presented the basement concealment space, the garage drain evidence, the greenhouse excavation, and the creek recovery. They paired each physical step with a timestamp: camera disable, laundry sanitation cycle, gate sensor, vehicle telemetry, store receipt, trail access camera. They introduced the DNA exclusion of parentage and the kinship match to a Pennsylvania family. They introduced the storage unit contents and the laminator. They showed jurors the Beach Hollow Project essay draft with the paragraph noting record inconsistencies. The defense chose a two-track approach. On the homicide, they argued absence of premeditation and suggested accidental death in a struggle that escalated when the babysitter trespassed into a restricted room. On the custody counts, they suggested informal kinship care arrangements and claimed that documentation gaps reflected bureaucratic complexity, not criminal intent. They challenged the admissibility of the storage unit search and the familial DNA comparisons. The court admitted the storage unit evidence under a valid warrant supported by probable cause, including the false birth records and the timing of the babysitter's disappearance. The court admitted the familial DNA as part of a lawful investigation relying on a relative's voluntary sample and subsequent court orders. The court limited narrative around the Pennsylvania missing child case to facts directly linking identity, avoiding prejudice beyond necessary identification. Expert testimony anchored the state's case. A forensic pathologist described trauma patterns on bone fragments and tool marks consistent with a metal edge and secondary cutting. A forensic anthropologist explained reconstruction, weight calculations for the creek bags, and decomposition timelines compatible with the disposal window. A digital forensics analyst detailed the basement camera disable and recovery of search terms on Daniel's device. A records specialist walked the jury through mismatched certificate numbers, clinic lot inconsistencies, and the absence of adoption filings. Detective Zhao's testimony connected the points without drama. She described the concealed room measurements, the stainless tray with wiped marks, the greenhouse ventilation duct, the wet-dry vacuum contents, and the drill that located the creek bend. She aligned each item with a date, a time, and a location. She confirmed chain of custody step by step. On cross, the defense pressed the absence of a complete body and argued that bagged fragments complicated certainty around cause of death. The pathologist held firm on blunt force trauma indicators. The defense pressed the children's well-being and suggested the Albrights provided a stable home. The records specialist responded with statute citations. Adoptions require court orders. These did not exist. The jury watched the neighbor's doorbell clip of Nora arriving and the absence of any image of her leaving. They reviewed the greenhouse rectangle photos and the recovered cooler with personal effects. They handled, under supervision, the floor drain trap extracted from the garage. They saw the laminator and blank cardstock. They read the partial kinship report linking the daughter to an aunt in Pennsylvania. They saw a photo of a much younger Lena under a different name in a kitchen with a different backsplash. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Closing arguments kept to outlines. The state argued a constructed life, a concealment space built months in advance, and a disposal that used contractor tools and a familiar creek access. The defense argued overreach and the harm of tearing apart a household. The state returned to sequence and statute. The jury deliberated for 31 hours across 4 days. They returned guilty verdicts on first-degree murder, kidnapping, interference with custody, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and identity fraud. They acquitted on witness intimidation, citing insufficient proof of direct threats prior to the crime. The judge polled the jurors. Each confirmed sentencing followed statutory guidelines. Daniel received life without the possibility of parole for murder, concurrent terms on tampering and fraud, and consecutive terms on the 2 custody interference counts. Elise received life with the possibility of parole after 30 years, reflecting her documented role in the identity fraud and concealment, but a lesser role in physical disposal actions as framed by the evidence. The court issued a permanent protective order for the children. Juvenile court placed them with kin identified through DNA in consultation with out-of-state authorities. Ashbury absorbed the outcome without spectacle. The flag came down at 14 Beach Hollow. A brokerage sign went up. The greenhouse frame was dismantled and hauled out on a flatbed. The cul-de-sac returned to routine school runs and yard work. The case file, thick with logs and receipts, closed at the prosecutor's office with a simple label across the spine. The Albright case did not hinge on a confession. It hinged on a calendar, a camera disable, a receipt for chlorine, a gate sensor, a drain trap, and a creek bend where weighted bags slowed. It hinged on a basement room measured to hide and a greenhouse dug to stage. It hinged on birth records that did not belong to the children in the house and a storage unit that held the tools to make those records look real. The perfect family secret was not a rumor. It was a set of templates and steps. The court resolved the charges with a life sentence and a long parole horizon. The children left the cul-de-sac under the protection of court orders and the structure of kinship care. Pennsylvania closed one missing child file and opened a new chapter for reintegration. Massachusetts marked a homicide solved without the theatrics that often attach to a case with headlines. The work stayed in the exhibits, the timelines, and the chain of custody logs. For communities that see themselves in tidy porches and school calendars, the case leaves a clear point. Most secrets do not survive under timestamps, serial numbers, and ground radar. Most facades fail at the drain trap and the receipt. The story here is not an argument about motives or inner life. It is a record of actions taken and actions traced. Viewers can ask one practical question at the end. When a story looks perfect from the street, what are the first 2 or 3 systems that would register the truth if anyone looked? Cameras, records, or simple movement sensors? In Ashbury, those 3 were enough.